This is MorningLine with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Barris with you today on a Wednesday. It's an interesting show. It's been a while since we've done one of these because our guest now is finally back able to be with us. And every time he comes on, I learn something. It's the fascinating world of medical malpractice. Fascinating, sometimes depressing as well, and sometimes vindication when it comes out. Have you ever been in a situation where you've dealt with a doctor or a hospital where you felt the result wasn't quite up to snuff, or that maybe something had been done wrong that shouldn't have? Well, we're going to talk about that today, and you're going to be invited to join in the conversation. We'll get the phone number up there in a moment, but your chance to maybe bring up a case or a situation for, our guest this morning. We'll talk about that. In general, we'll talk about this biz as well. It's been a while since I've seen, he's my friend too. It's Clint Kelly, the best malpractice attorney in the state.
Well, thank you. Gracious. I'm just so glad to be here. I mean, after all of it, I know.
It's been a while, but we've been through COVID and all of this, and you're back with us now. This is great.
I love the studio. I love the feeling of being around people when we do this. There's just no substitute for being around people and being able to do this show.
Totally
live.
agree. And I know you appreciate it live more than Zoom. Thing is, I remember when you first came on, and you've been doing this off and on for several years, and you've always been articulate and great at explaining some legal issues. But you are now very comfortable on air. You do a really good job. And like anything, with time you do. But I mean, not that you were bad before, but naturally you're a little bit nervous at first. You're the same on air as you are off air with me now.
I forgot how good it feels to be here. I mean, really, I do.
I know.
And be able to do this show for folks. Yeah, I love it.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on. Because it's been a while, and it's funny, we already have calls coming in, 737-7587. Clint, okay, remind folks again, these are the basics we would always start off before, but okay, malpractice and how someone sitting at home listening might think, do I have something to ask about? Kind of define what it is you do.
Yeah, it's unsafe health care that causes serious injury. It can cripple a patient or cause death. That's basically what it is. Okay. If in your mind as a patient or family member, if you observe what you consider to be unsafe health care or hear that from someone who's familiar with the care that a loved one's gotten, and it causes a serious injury, paralysis, amputation, death, those are the types of situations where you want to call an attorney and get an opinion, because those types of injuries can take away a person's ability to earn a living, feed themselves, or take care of their family. It's serious issues, and unfortunately, it's all too common today in medical care.
Let's make it clear that we're not talking about necessarily a negative result from a medical procedure. I mean, doctors sometimes do everything they can right, and you still have a negative result. That wouldn't be a case. What I learned from you is the phrase standard of care.
Yes, standard of care. It is a legal phrase, but it really means safety rules. There are rules that physicians and nurses and other healthcare providers must follow, just like police officers, just like teachers, just like lawyers. And when those rules are violated and they cause serious harm, that's when you may have a medical malpractice case, which we call in Tennessee healthcare liability.
Okay, and I don't know if since you've last been on, the legislature's been up to anything more in terms of tort law. Remind folks too, and it's very important. That's why if you're thinking you're sitting on something right now with a possible case, you need to act and not sit on it. Does the statute of limitations remain in place? And explain that to the folks.
It is, and you know what the statute is. Yes. Probably it's as well as I do.
Sure. Well, yeah.
It's 1 year from the date that you discover wrongdoing, and if it's 1 day more than a year, you've lost your cause of action. So what we always tell folks is if you think there's been unsafe health care that's caused a serious injury or death, don't put it off. Make the call. The call's always free, consultation's free, and just like many other personal injury cases, clients don't pay unless there's a financial recovery.
Yeah, that's how this plays. And right. Clint's been on before. You've told me about folks who have come through your door where you say, wow, this is a heck of a case. You've got a case, you were done wrong, and then you look at the date of when it occurred, and there's not a thing they can do.
Yes, the most painful thing for a trial lawyer to have to face is an injustice that cannot be remedied. And that's what happens when you sleep on your rights, wait too long to get advice.
Okay, and in these cases, again, you don't pay anything up front. It's something where, the contingency, and if he wins, you win, and that's where people get paid. You also are not afraid to litigate, are you?
No.
And what I mean by that is you'll go into the courtroom. Look, you and I both know there are a number of lawyers out there that specialize in settling, and there's nothing wrong with settling. But if the person you're going after knows that you're willing to take them to court, I think you got a better shot at getting a decent settlement.
Absolutely. You have to prove that you're willing to try the case in order for the insurance company to pay what is appropriate to resolve the case. What people need to know is your doctors and your nurses and your hospitals, they all have insurance. They're not paying anything out of their pocket. The insurance company is. But the insurance company is not going to pay a fair amount of money unless they are convinced that the lawyer will go to trial. You know, a lot of these people you see on TV, some of these advertisers on TV, they don't try cases very often. They're able to settle them. And, you know, auto wreck cases are the types of cases often you can settle. This is a different world. Medical malpractice or healthcare liability, these are cases that are hotly litigated. They're very personal to both sides. The damages are steep. And in those situations, there are occasions where you simply can't work it out, where there's too much difference about either whether the case should be settled or the amount. And that's why you want a trial lawyer, someone who's comfortable litigating in front of juries and winning. And that's always the most important thing, is being able to win the case.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, before we take our first break, since we had a couple calls right off the bat, and I think we lost Chad, but he can call back, we'll take him. But let's take Ed real quick before we take our first break. Ed, good morning. Hi, Ed.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
I want to congratulate Phil Williams for doing his fine investigative journalism about what's going on in our state government. I'm sorry for being off topic. Thank you.
Oh, okay. That's fine. There you go.
No, Ed's very much on topic, because what you're getting is an inside view of special interest money and how that affects the laws we live by.
I knew you'd jump on this.
And this is one of the major consequences of the laws that favor the healthcare industry over patients. Patients have lost so much ground over the last 10 or 15 years in being able to sue, being able to get reasonable compensation, and being made whole, because the lobby that represents the doctors and the hospitals and their insurance companies have been able to prevail upon the legislators to get them to pass laws friendly to healthcare. And so what you're seeing now with Phil Williams, how this works on a macro scale. So no, Ed's question is right on topic for what we deal with every day.
It is. It just, if folks haven't, the last, you can find the stories on our website, but Phil has had the past 2 days stories. I think he'll have more. This is going to be an ongoing investigation from his part. Basically, as you said, showing lobbyists. Okay, lobbyists play a role, but at some point, you know, anyone who doesn't believe money gets you access to people in power is a fool. And anyone who doesn't think there's a quid pro quo is a fool as well. The lawmakers say, oh, no, he gave me $1,000, but I'm going to take his call just as I would some Joe that I don't know that calls me. Wrong. They're lying to you, all right? But as far as Phil's piece and the power of the lobby, there is also a trial lawyer's lobby, is there not? I mean, and we talk about tort law, which is the kind of law that you deal with. Do they still try to make it more and more difficult for people to sue for malpractice?
Yes, and what people need to understand is the lawyers have a lobby, but it is small in comparison to the lobby, particularly healthcare lobby is so loaded with money, and it permeates every part of our government, that it's very difficult for patients to have a seat at the table to affect the legislation. And I'm afraid that's probably the way it's going to be into the foreseeable future, as long as money has creeped into politics like it has and controls the laws that we live by.
And as far as some of the laws where they tighten things up, we already know that there's that 1-year statute of limitations. I can understand maybe a statute of limitations somewhere being in line, but 1 year seems awful quick. What about caps on settlements?
Yeah, the worst one, I think, was the caps that they put, government-imposed caps on what injured patients and families can get in terms of a medical malpractice case. You know, when you've got somebody in a wheelchair and you tell them the most non-economic damages they can recover, $750,000, it's an insult, it's a slap in the face, it's government overreach, call it whatever you want. But that law got passed because of what you're seeing on the Phil Williams series, money in healthcare affecting laws that hurt patients.
Right. And you know, the one thing that Clint has always told me as we go to a break, you know, the settlement and the money that goes, he gets a bit of the pie as well, but to the harmed individual helps. But also big settlements that come down when mistakes are made force the medical community to make changes so it doesn't happen again.
Yes.
That's what's important for the big picture for all of us. It's not just, well, I'm glad you lost your leg and you're getting money for it. You deserve that, okay? But beyond that, you take a chunk of money out of a hospital or their insurance so their rates go up or whatever, maybe they take notice and have protocol in place to prevent these kind of things from happening again.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, people hear the one side of saying, oh, there's too many lawsuits, too litigious. By the way, that's coming from healthcare and the insurance companies. But what people don't know, these lawsuits change behavior. They make hospitals and doctors and nurses change the kind of care they provide. So hopefully, when you go to the hospital, some dangerous practice that hurts some other patient has been resolved through new protocols, and you don't have to suffer like that person did.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, more of your phone calls. Jennifer, Chad, and others, if you're on hold, stay there. Clint Kelly, malpractice attorney. If you have a question about a case potentially or a situation you've been through, give us a call with Clint right after this.